Like, this is actually reminding me the reason like why I like reading thrillers, because this one is just so fast-paced. Hey, how's it going? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Gabby, and today we're going to be starting on a very exciting reading vlog because I'm going to be reading some 2025 thriller arcs as well as an anticipated 2025 release. It's been a while since I've done a video where I read some new thriller arcs, and I've been piling them up recently because a few publishers have been so kind enough recently to send me some arcs of some of my most anticipated thrillers of the whole year. So I thought, why not read a few for this video? So the first arc that I'm going to be reading for this video is going to be A Killing Cold by Kate Alice Marshall. This one is actually publishing in the month of February, and it's from the same author as What Lies in the Woods, which ended up being a 5-star read from me a few years ago. It was actually a BookTube pick a few years ago, and it was the first book that I ever gave 5 stars to for my own book club. So like, Kate Alice Marshall is somebody that I definitely have my eyes on. I did read her other book called No One Can Know. I read that one last year during Winterween, and I think I just ended up giving that one around 3 stars. But this one sounds like it's going to be even more, you know, up my alley because this one has like a snowy atmosphere. It takes place on like an isolated mountain, and it's about a girl going to meet her boyfriend's like really rich family. I don't know, this one sounds like it could be a fun time. And then I'm also going to be reading The Last Session by Julia Bartz. This one is not publishing until April, but I had to include this as soon as I got my hands on this book because this is definitely one of my most anticipated thrillers because it's from the same author as The Writing Retreat, which is one of my top favorite thrillers of all time. Like, I think in the year that I read it, it was like in my top 3 books of the year. Like, I loved it so much. I just knew that I'd be so excited to read this because of how much I loved The Writing Retreat, and I just can't wait to see what Julia Bartz does next. I'm also going to be reading Cross My Heart by Megan Collins. This is a new release thriller that's actually coming out in the month of January, and this author is an author that I've read a few times before. The only book that I've finished from this author is the one called The Winter Sister. I read that so many years ago, and I think I ended up giving that one 4 stars. Like, I think I really enjoyed it, but then everything else that I've tried to read from this author, I've DNF'd. We're following a character who receives a heart transplant, and then she finds out that she's received the heart of this woman who was the wife of her favorite author. So like, what the heck? That sounds really interesting, and I think it's like a stalking story. Like, she starts to get obsessed with him. And then the last thing that I'll be reading for this video is The Favorites by Layne Fargo, which, no, technically this is not a thriller, but I wanted to include it in this video anyway because it is one of my most anticipated books of this entire year, and because Layne Fargo is a name you might be familiar with if you read a lot of thrillers, because Layne Fargo is actually the author of They Never Learn, which is like one of my favorite thrillers of all time. So like, how cool is it that Layne Fargo decided to write like an epic romance story? I think that's so fun personally when authors kind of jump around into different genres like this. And I don't really know too much about this other than that it's described as being an epic love story that follows 2 figure skaters, and we kind of follow throughout their career. I guess there was like a big scandal. I don't know, it sounds like it could be right up my alley. Like, this is definitely a 5-star prediction for me, not only because of how much I loved They Never Learn by this author, but because, oh my god, sports romance and like figure skating specifically is something I am very interested in. So hopefully this one ends up being a great time. Hello, I thought I would update you because I have started reading A Killing Cold. Last night I only got about like 40 pages into it. I don't know, I was trying to read more last night, but I was so freaking tired, so I ended up crashing a little bit early. But so far this has been very interesting. I'm already liking the vibes. It feels like it's like the perfect book to read at this time of year, to be honest, because there's a lot of like snowy atmosphere. You know, most of this book is taking place at this estate called Idlewood, which is like where this guy's family's from. We're following this protagonist named Theo, and she's 24 years old, and she recently just got engaged to this guy named Connor Dalton, who's about like 27 years old, and he's like really fucking rich. Like, his family is like so rich, and so he's taking her to the mountain that his family owns. Like, he owns like the whole mountain or like half of the mountain or something, I don't know, but the mountain is called Idlewood, and the whole premise of the book is that he's hoping that she can impress his grandma. I mean, I guess he doesn't really care. Like, he keeps saying like, oh, I don't care, but like, she's really trying to impress his family. And his grandma Louise is a character that is just very I don't know, kind of pretentious and just like one of those rich people who are just like, oh, but you have a college degree, right? Or like, what are your life plans? Like, tell me more, and like, please tell me that you aspire to do more things other than just work in a bookstore. You know, she's definitely giving those kinds of vibes. But I am liking the setup of this a lot so far. I'm liking the characters. It seems like Theo has a very mysterious past, you know, our main protagonist, because she keeps talking about how like, oh my god, Connor only knows half of the truth, or like, it seems like she's hiding a lot lot of her past from Connor. She also was telling him that she like doesn't have any family, and so everyone in his family thinks that she's an orphan, but I don't think that that's true. And then it's also interesting because he does have a sister and he has a younger brother who are both also there at the estate, and Theo has been getting these anonymous text messages that are like, I know what you did, and like, stay away from Connor. And so she thinks that somebody might be onto her, and so I'm wondering if it is going to be like one of his siblings that are sending her those messages. Like, we don't really know yet, but I am liking the atmosphere of this so far. It does have like good snowy vibes. Like, there's no cell service up there, so it's kind of eerie. I like the like eat the rich family vibes that I'm sure we're gonna get from this. And so yeah, anyways, it's currently raining right now. It was actually snowing like a tiny bit this morning because it's only like 37 degrees outside right now, and so I'm kind of surprised that it's not snowing because it feels cold enough to snow. I mean, the weather app does say it feels more like 32 degrees, so for now it's raining, but there's a good chance that it could turn into snow at any minute. But I decided to drive down to the coffee shop because I thought it'd be best to sit in a coffee shop and read today. You know, anytime that I'm reading with my eyeballs, I find that I'm able to read better if I'm not just like sitting at the apartment. Like, I like going out and reading in public. I think it's so fun. In the night, but I wanted to give you a quick update because I've still been reading A Killing Cold. Earlier today when I was at the Woods coffee shop, it was so nice because I actually ran into one of my old coworkers from the restaurant that I used to work at. She's working there now, and it was so cool to see her because I haven't talked to her in like a few years. And then later tonight when I got home, I made the dinner that I always make. Like, it's literally my comfort dinner. And then me and my sister watched more of the originals. But anyways, I have been reading A Killing Cold. While I was sitting in that coffee shop, I got 185 pages in, and so far this one is feeling okay for me. I don't know what it is about this story. Like, I'm enjoying it, but I'm not getting like gripped in the way that I thought that I would. Like, I'm not obsessed with this in the way that I was hoping for, especially because of how much I loved, you know, What Lies in the Woods from this author. Like, I know that she's capable of writing a thriller that just really grabs me and like really works for me. I feel like there's been a few little like twisty things that have happened so far that I kind of feel like were a little bit obvious. Like, I don't know, there's been nothing super shocking in this book for me yet. I also realized one of the things that I thought was kind of like a little bit twisty, it's actually mentioned in the description of the book, and I didn't even realize that. So I would recommend not reading the full description because there is something mentioned in the description of this book that doesn't happen until like a little bit later on in the story. I do think that this book has really great atmosphere. I'm really loving the like snowy atmosphere and the way it kind of feels claustrophobic, like she's stuck on this mountainside with this family. And I do think that the book has interesting characters, you know, like I do feel connected to this protagonist, even though I do find her to be a little bit annoying. I'm not gonna lie, like there's something about her voice in this book, like the narrations in her head, she's just kind of annoying sometimes. And like the way she keeps asking questions to this family, I'm like, there is no way in hell that they are not onto her. Like, she's just so obvious about some things where I feel like she should be a little bit more subtle. So I don't know, like I'm not loving the protagonist as much as I was at the beginning. Like, she's just starting to annoy me a little bit. I'm just not like desperate to finish it right now in the way that I was hoping I would feel at this point when I'm like this far in. I do think that tonight I'm going to try and stay up and finish the rest of this book, but like, I don't know, we'll have to see. Will it hold my attention for the rest of the night? If not, I'll probably finish up the rest of it tomorrow morning. Okay, hello, it is the next morning, and the good news is that last night I was able to finish A Killing Cold. Like, it definitely held my interest so that I could finish this book last night, but the bad news is that I didn't really enjoy this book very much. I think I'm probably gonna give this like 2.5 stars. I don't know, man. Oh, I'm so upset about it because I wanted to love this so badly, and like the beginning of this book was so promising, but I honestly feel like this book was not only pretty predictable, like there was only one kind of plot twist that I didn't see coming, but like I wasn't the biggest fan of the plot twist. And I also feel like this book just feels like the same shit that I've read like 100 times. I don't know how to explain it, but I feel like I've read so many thrillers kind of like this. I also feel like with a thriller like this, I kept waiting for the story to like really grip me, and I feel like that never really happened because even as I was nearing like the last couple of pages of the book, I kept getting so distracted. Like I just could not focus my attention on this book. And I think that's because I was actually like really bored with the story, like really bored with what I was reading. And because I feel like some of the things happening at the end of this book, like, oh my god, it feels so far-fetched for me and like so convenient for the story. Like, for example, a character just like starting to get some memories back that they had forgotten about their childhood at the most convenient times. That's like one of my least favorite things in thrillers, when you're having a character who has some like memory problems, or like they have moments from their childhood that they've forgotten about and they don't remember things. And then when they start to remember things at a time that feels very convenient for the story, like, oh my god, it just bothers me so much. You know, I seem to be the unpopular opinion with this one because, I mean, this book isn't technically published yet because it comes out in February. But from what I've been seeing on Goodreads so far, this one has a pretty high average rating. Like, I think it's like a 4.1 or a 4.2 out of 5 right now, which is pretty shocking to me considering that I don't find this book to be that entertaining or that good, but it seems to be working for a lot of other people. So like, I'm glad that it seems to be very well received so far. So I might have the unpopular opinion with this one that I just don't really care for it that much. There was one quote though that I really did like about parenthood that I thought I would share, when they said, having kids makes you crazy. First, because it's your job to protect them from every little thing and they're completely helpless. And then because it's not your job anymore and you've got to let them be out in the world without you. And I thought that that was like a really great quote about parenthood. And I think that that's really true because, you know, when a kid's born, they are like relying on you 100% for everything. But then I think it's kind of like heartbreaking that like as children age, they like need you less and less. And then you just have to be comfortable with like them being out in the world without you now. I think that that was like a really beautiful and heartbreaking quote about parenthood that I thought I would share with you because it was one of the only things that I liked about this. But anyways, today we are on to the next. I think I'm going to start on The Last Session by Julia Bartz today, which I am so incredibly excited for this, but also like equally nervous because I was such a big fan of The Writing Retreat. And so like if I don't end up loving this one, it's going to be truly heartbreaking for me. And I am a little bit nervous for this one because I do think that this book involves like a cult of some kind, and like I don't usually like thrillers that involve cults, but because it's this author Julia Bartz, like I trust her with my life after how much I loved The Writing Retreat. So I'll be starting on this one today. I do have some reading sprints on my Patreon starting in just about 30 minutes, so I'll get started on this. Now 118 pages in, and I just hit part 2 of the book. I'm so excited to let you know that I'm really enjoying this one so far. There's just something about the way that this author writes her thrillers. She just has this way of like hooking me right from the start. Like I'm already really invested. I'm already really liking the characters. I'm liking the setup of this. And so in this story, we're following this character named Thea, which I know is like so confusing. Like the last book that I just read, the protagonist's name was Theo. Like what are the chances? Apparently in 2025, the thrillers have some female protagonists named Theo or Thea. But anyway, we're following this protagonist named Thea, and she works in a psychiatric unit. She's a psychiatrist. They bring in this woman who looks just like her, and she's mute. Like the woman is not speaking. And so there's kind of this mystery about like what's going on with this woman and like what is her story. And then this story is about how she's starting to become obsessed with this woman, like trying to learn her past, trying to learn why they look identical. She's finding out more and more about her identity. And then this woman gets ripped away from her life very quickly. And so it's kind of about how she's going to be going on a mission to try and find this woman herself. The beginning of this book takes place in New York City, which was very fun, but now the book is taking place in New Mexico. And already the vibes of like the desert in New Mexico, like, oh my god, the vibes are incredible. They're amazing. It almost kind of does remind me of The Writing Retreat in a way because of what she's going to be doing in New Mexico. Like the place that she's at kind of feels like a retreat in the same way that The Writing Retreat kind of had. And this book so far, it's reminding me of a few different things that I've loved. Like it definitely reminds me of The Silent Patient just because of the nature of this character's job at the beginning of this book. And as my friend Ariane just said on Patreon, it's kind of reminding me of the Book of the Most Precious Substance. Like, I don't know why, it kind of has that kind of vibe to it. I mean, in this book, there has been a lot of trigger warnings for some pretty dark things, especially like religious trauma. I mean, right at the start of this book, there is a content warning for a number of different things, including like religious abuse, child abuse, sexual harassment and assault, physical violence, murder, cults, psychosis, and suicide attempts. And there are some, you know, pretty disturbing scenes that are kind of like flashback scenes that our character's remembering about her own childhood. I also love there's like an element with a podcast in this book, and I love how they were talking about this idea of a ghost lover. It was really interesting. They said your ghost lover is your inner vision of a perfect partner. They're a ghost because they don't really exist. You can only see them when you project them onto another person. And it says your ghost lover holds parts of you that you're not able to access so that you look for them in another person. I don't know, I thought that whole concept was like very interesting and very thought-provoking. I also just feel really connected to Thea as a character so far, because like, oh my god, I am cracking up. Like there will be scenes where she like reads these diaries that she wrote when she was in 8th grade, and it's like super embarrassing and like super cringy to look back on it. But I was like, holy shit, like that was me as an 8th grader. Like I was literally writing in my diary like the exact same way that this character wrote in her diary, and like, oh my god, it is just bringing back all of the memories from middle school. Because right at the start of this book, there was talk about how she's having her like 20-year reunion with like the middle schoolers that she used to know. And I was just like, oh my god, because the middle school memory flashbacks, like those were some tough years, you know? There's nothing more brutal than being that age when you're like 12, 13, 14. Like, gosh, that's a rough time in life. And like just her looking back through the diaries, like it was cracking me up because I was like, oh my god, like I feel so seen. Like that was literally me as like a 13-year-old, and it's so embarrassing to think about now. But yeah, I'm so excited that I'm loving this one already as much as I am. I think I'm going to try to read a little bit more tonight. I just have a little bit of time left on my Patreon sprints right now. Hello, it is now the next afternoon, but I wanted to come at you with another update because I've still been reading the last session and I'm now 245 pages in. Last night I ended up reading a little bit more before I went to bed. I actually stayed up kind of late for the first time reading in a while. And I mean that like other than like reading romances on my Kindle, because now like I do read late on my Kindle into the night when I read my romance books. But, like it's been a long time since I've stayed up reading a thriller, like, and especially like a physical book just in my bed. I was having a great time and I was finding it really hard to pull my eyes away from this book. But anyway, I did want to let you know that with this book, I'm starting to have mixed feelings. I don't know, because I just hit part 3 in the book at like page 204. And I do think that up until part 3, I was having like the time of my life. You know, like I was living, laughing, loving. I was really enjoying it. I was thinking, oh my god, is this gonna be 5 stars? Like I'm loving this so much. But then ever since part 3 of the book, you know, I'm about 40 pages into part 3 right now. And I feel like the story's starting to lose me a little bit just because of what's going on in the story right now. It's starting to feel just a tad bit ridiculous, and it feels like it's starting to lean into some territory where, I don't know, it's just not as interesting as it was before. I mean, I do love the idea of this like creepy little retreat center that's like in the middle of New Mexico, and like it's very secluded, and like the vibes are so strong, you know, like nobody knows that they're out there, they have no cell service. It's definitely giving all of the atmosphere. And I really do like our main protagonist, you know, Thea, that we're following in this book. Like I find her to be very interesting and very smart. I think as we're going into part 3, we're starting to get a better understanding of like what is actually happening, and I guess it's just going in a direction that like, it's not that I wasn't expecting it to go in this direction. I'm just not sure how I feel about it. You know, I just don't find it to be that interesting. I'm sorry, I'm being so vague. I'm like trying not to get into anything spoilery about this because, you know, this literally doesn't even publish until April. So I'm trying to be as vague as I can, but it's just, I don't know. It's starting to lose me just a little bit. I have about like 100 pages left, almost exactly 100 pages left. And I do see that I'm going to be approaching a part 4 after I get about 300 pages into the book, so things could still turn around, you know? I don't know, we'll have to see if the ending can turn it around for me. I am a little bit nervous though, because I am seeing on Goodreads that this book has an average of like 3.4 out of 5 right now, and like the book isn't even out yet. Like this is only about like 200 people that have rated the book so far, and it's already getting like really low ratings. But in my head, I was like, well, that's no big deal because The Writing Retreat also got a lot of really bad reviews, and like I loved it. Like The Writing Retreat is like one of my favorite thrillers that I've ever read. So I just like brushed it off as like, oh, there's no reason to worry about the low rating. But now I am starting to worry just a little bit. It just feels like the pacing of the story is really slow. Like this one's definitely a lot more slow paced than The Writing Retreat. Right now I'm so excited because I'm getting ready. I don't know if you can tell, it's not usual for me to wear like a leather jacket on a daily basis. And like maybe I've been inspired by like The Vampire tie-dyes and like all those leather jackets they be wearing. I don't know. But I'm so excited because tonight I'm gonna be going and hanging out with my friends, Josh and Katie. They ended up moving last summer and it was like really devastating because now they live a bit further away. They were like, hey, we're gonna be in Bellingham. Do you wanna like meet up? We're gonna go book shopping together and then we're gonna get dinner and it's gonna be so much fun. I've just really missed them so much, you know, like ever since they've moved, it's been really hard. So any time that we get to spend together now is like extra special. Hello, hi, it is now the next afternoon. We ended up going to Village Books, which is like one of my favorite bookstores, you know, because they are the ones that have the ARC shelf. And I ended up getting two things from Village Books. One of the books is an ARC from their ARC shelf, and then the other book is a regular paperback that I ended up picking up. But one of the ARCs that I found there is this one called The Shutouts by Gabrielle Korn, and this is one that I've been hearing so much about. I actually just got the other book from this author, Years for the Taking. I just picked it up from Aardvark Book Club this month as an add-on. Like, I just wanted to add it on because I've been hearing great things about these sci-fi books. And I don't know, like after reading The Ministry of Time, you know, at the beginning of this year, I'm feeling so like I just want to read more sci-fi. And then I also ended up picking up Wolf Song by TJ Klune. And look at the freaking sprayed edges, dude. It's like that orange. I actually ended up picking this one up because my friend Katie convinced me to while we were at the bookstore. She said she doesn't usually read stuff like this, but she ended up really liking this one. And I've heard about this over time. I know that it's basically like gay werewolf smut, I think, is what this book is. But I was like, you know what? Sign me up. I'm here for it. I really feel like in 2025, I'm gonna be like back in my romance era. Not that I ever really left my romance era, but I just feel like I'm gonna be in the mood to read a lot more romance this year. So who knows, you know, maybe 2025 will be my year of like reading a lot more romance and more sci-fi. And it was such a nice night. We even went to this gelato spot afterwards that I've never been to before, and that was really good. But last night after I got home, I finished reading the last session, and like, oh my god, it was taking everything in me to read those last 100 pages. Like, I don't know why. I was getting like a really bad tension headache, like right at the front of my head last night. I don't know if I was getting a headache because of this book, because like I really didn't end up liking the end of this very much, which is so heartbreaking, especially because the beginning of this book, I really thought that this could be 5 stars. Like, it was feeling like it could be a 5 stars, but in this book, especially after part 3, which is when you're about like 210 pages in, it starts to get ridiculous in a way that like was not fun for me. I don't know, the story in my opinion started to get so repetitive, and I was just getting very frustrated with our protagonist because I felt like she was a little bit too trusting about certain things. I also feel like it got repetitive in terms of like what was even happening at this retreat place. It just felt like I was reading a lot of the same thing like over and over and over again, and I was ready for the story to really pick up. It really just, I don't know, this story went off in a direction that I wasn't really expecting, but in a way that just did not interest me at all. Like, I was just losing interest in the overall plot so quick. The way that this book actually ends, I don't know, in my opinion, it's so unsatisfying because I feel like there's a lot of action and momentum and like build up, and then it just ends. Like, I don't know, it was so abrupt. I'm kind of disappointed because the vibes of this book were so great in the first half. I mean, like I was saying, I was eating this shit up. This story being over 350 pages, like it does feel a little bit long, especially because after page 200, it really starts to get so repetitive. And so the second half of this book, the pacing was just killing me because it was so slow paced. So like, I am so deeply upset that this book wasn't a 5 star and that I didn't love it as much as I thought I would. I mean, a 3 star, it's not a bad rating. I do still think I would recommend this book for something that has similar vibes to The Writing Retreat, but I just don't think this one is nearly as interesting or as fun as The Writing Retreat was. Maybe I didn't like this one as much either because, you know, like I mentioned, I don't usually like books that involve cults, and like that ended up playing a big part of this story. I also don't usually like books that involve like religion and like religious trauma. I know my friend Matt, I saw that he compared this book to The Last Housewife because of those things, which is another book that I didn't really like because of the talk about like religious trauma. Like it's just not something that I enjoy reading about. So now that I've finished the last session, I don't really know what I should read next because I kind of have two books that I was hoping to read for this vlog. This one is just over 400 pages, it looks like. But because I've had two thrillers back to back that just didn't really do much for me, I feel like I'm kind of more in the mood right now to jump into something like The Favorites. So I think I might have to read this one next and then read Cross My Heart after that because I've been hearing some great things about The Favorites and I'm so freaking excited for this.
Baby, now we're strangers, just two people in a crowded room. I don't even know your name yet, but I know I'm gonna fall for you. Walking over to you with a drink in my hand. They say
I just hit part 2 in the book right now. I think I'm about like 150-ish pages in. And so far, this is going well. I'm a little sad because I'm not like immediately obsessed with this in the way that I thought that I would be. But this book is really cool because I am listening to this one on audio and the audiobook is fantastic. Oh my god, it's a full cast audiobook and there's even some like sound effects on the audiobook. And it's really cool because I'm seeing so many people compare this to Daisy Jones and the Six, which I would definitely agree with because it's almost told in that same kind of like interview style where they have like a narrator who's like narrating their story and it's talking about how like they were an obsession, they were a scandal, and then ultimately a tragedy. And then you're kind of getting the flashbacks into like what actually happened with them. So the story is about these two figure skaters. Her name is Kat and then his name is Heath. And they were not only like partners when it came to like their figure skating, like they would do all of their routines together and practice together, but then they also were together. Like right at the start of this book, they were already together from the time that they were like very young. And I think she said that they had like liked each other since they were like 10 years old or something. And maybe that's the thing that I'm like not loving as much about this, if I'm being honest, because I don't love, you know, like what is it, like childhood friends to lovers? Like I don't tend to love that trope in my romance. I don't like when the romance starts when like they're basically already together. Like I kind of wanted to see the buildup of like how they got to know each other and how they got together in the first place, which we do get like a little bit of, but it's just not as descriptive as I wanted it to be, I guess, because we just kind of get thrown right into the story when like they're already together, they're already practicing, and they, right at the start of this, they're about like 16 years old and they're trying to get good enough so that they can eventually be in the Olympics. And then we kind of follow their journey as they start to get better and better at what they're doing and they start to get involved in like some scandalous things, you know, they have to like move to Los Angeles and it's like this whole big thing, you know? But I think so far this book is going okay for me. I don't know what it is about the writing, but I'm feeling like, I guess how I felt about Daisy Jones and the Six, where like because there's a lot of like interview style of the book, it makes you almost feel like disconnected from the story or like you're watching it from afar, and I don't really feel emotionally connected with what's happening at all. Even though in this book we do get the interviews in between the chapters and then we do get like her perspective. So the story's not told entirely in interviews the same way that Daisy Jones and the Six is, but there still is like so many moments with the interviews that like I don't know if I love that style of writing. Like I don't know if I love the like interview format kind of thing. I think their romance for me, because I didn't get to see the like early stages of their romance, I feel like it's feeling a little insta-love, and I think that that's why I don't really feel like I can root for them. I don't know, it's like I have such mixed feelings on this because the romance is like not really doing much for me in this book right now, but I am really liking all the talk about like figure skating, the intense competition, and how like it's her dream to be an Olympic athlete and like this is what she wants to do. You know, like I really love that aspect of this book. I also love how it is kind of giving like Challengers vibes just a little with the way like her dream is to be in the Olympics. Because of the way that she's like, a lot of people say that my first love was Heath, but you would be wrong because my first love was figure skating. And just the way it's like she's in love with the sport and he's in love with her. You know, like that's kind of the vibe that I'm getting from this, which I do really like. Right now at part 2 of the book is the part where it's starting to feel like some drama is gonna be happening, so I am a little bit more invested now. So far, I feel like these first 150 pages have just been okay. I don't know, I'm not feeling that connected to the story at this moment in time, so like I'm hoping that in this next chunk, I'm really gonna get more invested as the story and the drama picks up. Hello, good morning. It is the next morning and I'm coming at you with an update that I have been just like absolutely dreading, because sadly I did not end up loving the favorites as much as I was hoping to. Like, it actually kills me to come on here right now and say that I'm only giving this 3 stars. I thought it was fine. I don't know, like I hate, like there's nothing more that I hate than when I have to come on camera and give like a super unpopular opinion on a book that has been like really loved. I think on Goodreads right now this book is averaging like a 4.5 out of 5, which is like really high, and it seems like everyone is just absolutely eating this shit up. So like I don't understand what I'm missing. I had this as like a 5-star prediction, you know, like I really thought that I was gonna be obsessed with this. I thought it was gonna be like my new favorite thing ever, but I don't know why I just found this to be so average. Like, it was fine. But you know, maybe it does make sense why I didn't like this one as much, because the first time that I read Daisy Jones and the Six, I actually really didn't care for it. I think I gave Daisy Jones and the Six like a 2-star the first time that I read it, because I was reading it physically, and then on the second listen when I listened to it on audio, I think I ended up giving it like 4 stars the second time, because the audiobook was really good. And I would agree with this book. Like, I do think that the audiobook is really good, really well done. You know, it's full cast. It was a really like engaging audiobook to listen to, but the story itself was just, I don't know, like I felt so disconnected from it. And I don't know why that is, but like I felt the same exact way about Daisy Jones and the Six, where I was like, I don't really get the hype with this kind of story. And it sucks because I want to get it so bad. You know, like I really wanted to love this, and I'm like jealous of everybody who's reading this and saying that they're like absolutely loving it, because like that's the feeling that I wanted to have while reading this. And I think it's because I didn't fully connect with the characters, and that's why I probably didn't emotionally connect with this book the way that a lot of other people seem to be connecting with it. I also think though it partially does have to do with like the tropes and like the expectations that I had for some reason going into this, because I don't know why in my mind, when I had heard that we were going to be having like figure skaters and like an epic love story, I thought it was going to be a situation where it would be like a forbidden romance. You know, like they're starting to catch feelings for each other as they're like working together, and then like the tension and the pining is like building as they're like, oh my god, we can't be together because we work together. And like I thought it was going to be like that kind of situation for some reason. Like that's what I thought in my head. And then I think I was just so disappointed when I read the book, and then I was like, oh, it's actually like they're together from the very beginning when they're like teenagers, and like they've been in love with each other since they were like 10 years old. And it's one of those stories where it's like, oh, you know, like as their careers start to get more intense and like they start to grow up, other things start to happen and they start to like have problems, and you know, like that kind of story. I don't know, I just wasn't the biggest fan of the romance, I guess, which is one of the biggest like letdowns of this for me, because I was really expecting like, an epic romance. But maybe I didn't really care for this book as much because it had some tropes in romance that I don't usually like. Like, I think it's so boring in a romance book when they're like already together at the beginning. Like, I just wanted more pining. I wanted more longing from both of them. Like, that's what I really look forward to in a romance book. So maybe it's just me. I don't know. It's crazy too, because when you think about this story, like this does remind me of a lot of different things that I've loved before. I just don't think that this book got nearly as good as any of those other things. Because like, yes, you could compare this to Challengers, and like I would totally understand, because you really are following a story about a woman who's in love with a sport and a man who's in love with her, which is very much giving Challengers vibes, okay? And then also like I do see the comparisons to, you know, Daisy Jones and the Six. I think in some ways this also does remind me of the movie I, Tonya, you know, which is like one of my favorite movies that stars Margot Robbie, and like I, Tonya is inspired by like the real life figure skater, you know, Tonya Harding, and like all of that situation. And you know, this book definitely did remind me of like the Tonya Harding thing a little bit, because it's like the only thing I know that's also like scandalous things that have happened with figure skaters, except Tonya Harding was like a real person and like a real, you know, true story that happened. But like, it's crazy that this book is reminding me of a lot of things that I've, you know, seen and read and loved, but this book just didn't even come close to like how I felt about those other things that I want to compare it to. So like, it's not that I disliked this. Like, I thought that this was fine. You know, it was 3 stars. I just expected this to be a 5-star, and I think that's why I feel so disappointed. And I just hate to be the one with like an unpopular opinion on like a truly popular book, because I think that this book is going to be like the next big thing. You know, like I think this book is probably going to get a movie adaptation. This book is probably going to be on everybody's favorites list of this year. Like, I can just really see this book popping off this year. I really think this book is going to be the new like Daisy Jones and the Six, like what every single bitch is obsessed with. So like, I'm just sad that like I'm not in on that hype, you know, like I really wanted to love this. Anyway, I only have one book left to read for this reading vlog, and it's Cross My Heart by Megan Collins. And this is one that I am excited about. I've been hearing from people that this one is like a very quick read. Like, it's just action packed. And hopefully we end on a positive note, because like these 2025 books are not going that well for me so far. It open. And part 1 of this book says, "You belong with me." So I'm like, do we think that every part of the book is going to be named after a Taylor Swift song, or is that just a coincidence? Let's take bets now. I haven't flipped through to see where part 2 is yet, but I'm willing to bet that part 2 will also be called a Taylor Swift song just for fun. It is now like 2:30 in the afternoon, but I'm so excited to let you know that I've been sitting here reading Cross My Heart and I'm now 120 pages in, and so far I'm actually really liking this one a lot. Like, this is actually reminding me the reason like why I like reading thrillers, because this one is just so fast-paced. It's so interesting. I mean, I do tend to love thrillers that are about like somebody getting obsessed with another person and trying to like wiggle their way into their lives, and this is definitely giving me those vibes. Like, I'm having a great time with it. So the general premise for this one is that we're following this character named Rosie, and she has a really cool job because she actually works in her parents' bridal store, which I think is very fun. But the main thing of the story is that about a year ago, she had a life-saving heart transplant surgery. She got the heart of this woman who was the wife of a very successful author that she's a really big fan of. The guy's name is Morgan, and he's like a really successful author, and his wife passed away a year ago, and she was the one who ended up getting the wife's heart. And so at the beginning of this book, she's reaching out to him on this anonymous like Donors Connect email thing, where she's emailing him to say like, you know, I can't say thank you to your wife, but like I wanted to say thank you so much to you. And so they start to connect over email, which is really fun. And then it's a story about how like she's starting to get obsessed with this man who's like an author. She's like reading his books. She's like trying to get to know more about his life. And she's also starting to do some digging of her own into like what actually happened to his wife. And there is some speculation online, like people thinking like, oh my god, this guy definitely killed his wife. And there's a lot of very compelling evidence. And so that has been really interesting and really fun. I love how like in between every chapter that we get from her perspective, we get to see the emails that they've been exchanging to each other, which I think is really interesting. And the emails are anonymous. So like that's also really interesting and really fun. It's also really cool because we do get to see his perspective only through his emails to his best friend. So like it is kind of interesting to get his perspective on things, and I like the way that it's done. It's very interesting. It's very well written. Like I'm really liking the writing style in this a lot. It's also just so fast paced, and there have already been a few little like twisty moments that I didn't see coming that I was like, oh shit. Like that definitely adds a few layers to this story. It's not as like predictable right off the jump as you might expect. So like I really like that about this. Also, I was so right about the whole like Taylor Swift thing, because I didn't even realize that at the start of this book, there's a thing in the front that says, for everyone who relates to the prophecy by Taylor Swift and for every woman who's ever been called crazy by someone they love. Like that's like the dedication of the book. And I was like, oh my god, how did I not even notice that? Because part 1 of the book is titled You Belong With Me, which is, you know, a Taylor Swift song off of the album Fearless. And then it's so cool because I just skimmed ahead to see that part 2 is coming up very soon. And part 2 is called Love Story, which is also a Taylor Swift song off of that same album. So like, how fun is that? There's also been a lot of talk about Taylor Swift throughout this book, which I really appreciate, because in one of his emails, he says that Taylor Swift is the Sylvia Plath of our time. And this girl is a big Swiftie, so like that definitely had her swooning, you know? I also love how one of their first conversations was talking about Taylor Swift's Red album. There was also a really great quote about the TV show Friends that I like wholeheartedly agree with. They said, Friends, though often problematic in a current day context, remains one of the most memorably funny shows. I told her people only shit on it because they think that makes them intellectual, when really it just makes them boring. Like, oh my god, pop off. Like, totally agree. I'm a huge fan of Friends, so I loved that. I also think it's so interesting to like read from the perspective of somebody who's like recently had a heart transplant, because I think that is just so freaking terrifying. You know, like everything about the idea of a heart transplant is something that's like so scary to me, you know, because she's talking a lot about how like she's so lucky that the surgery was even successful with like a heart transplant, and that she's probably only going to get up to like 15 years with this heart before she needs another one, and like if she even gets that long. And there's just so much uncertainty that comes with a heart transplant like that that like, oh my god, like I don't know how anybody could deal with it. Like she's just so brave and like so strong, and like anybody that's ever dealt with like heart problems or like heart transplants, like oh my gosh, like that is some serious shit, and like it's just so scary to even imagine. So like I think because of those things, she's a really interesting character to follow. I'm just loving this. I'm loving this way more than I thought that I would. So like I'm so excited. I kind of just want to like sit in bed all afternoon and like binge read the rest of this book, but I really do want to go to the gym today. I want to go to the gym before it gets dark, so I think I'm going to head to the gym for now. Good morning. It is now the next day, and I thought I would update you really quick because last night I read a little bit more of Cross My Heart. I only got up to page like 170, but I just hit part 2 of the book, and right before part 2 there was a plot twist that I didn't really see coming, and so like I'm really curious to see how this is going to change the rest of the story. I have about, I don't know, maybe like 130 pages left, I think. But anyways, last night was super crazy. Me and my sister, we made these burgers from HelloFresh, and like, oh my god, I think that they were my favorite burgers that I've ever made from HelloFresh. On these ones, they had like the smoked Gouda cheese and like paprika, but then HelloFresh also has this like smoky mustard that I am so obsessed with. Like, I'm not usually a mustard fan at all. Like, I didn't even think that I liked mustard, but apparently this smoky mustard that HelloFresh has, like, oh my god, it's freaking delicious. And then last night, we also watched more of the originals. We watched 5 episodes last night, which was a lot. And the whole time it was basically just me screaming over Elijah because, oh my god, he's like my favorite. I love him so much. Anyway, I just came down to Robex to pick up an acai bowl because I was like, it's been a minute. I really want to get an acai bowl today. So I'm gonna go find a spot to park by the water and eat my acai bowl and then hopefully finish reading this book today. That's the goal. I just got home and I'm so excited to let you know that I finished reading Cross My Heart and I ended up really enjoying this one for the most part. I think I am probably going to end up giving this around 4 stars. Like, I don't think it was like the perfect 5-star thriller for me, but in my opinion, I feel like this is one of those books that is like the perfect popcorn thriller. And what I mean by like a popcorn thriller is that it's not going to be like too deep and it's probably not going to be like the best thriller that you've ever read in your freaking life, but like it's so entertaining. Like, this book definitely achieved what it was trying to do. There was one plot twist towards the end of the book that I was like, oh no, because I thought it was kind of predictable and I was like, I'm feeling like it's going in a cheesy direction, but then there was something else that happened at the end that I did not see coming and I thought it was actually like a really clever twist. I don't know, I feel like this author does a really great job throughout the story of like misdirecting you, which is one of my favorite things in thrillers, and I don't think a lot of authors can do that very well, or at least I feel like it takes a very skilled author to be able to like misdirect the audience in the way that this author does, and I had a lot of fun with that throughout this book. I don't know why, but I feel like if you were a fan of The Wife Upstairs by Rachel Hawkins or The Unraveling by Vi Keeland, I feel like this is one that you could enjoy as well, because I feel like, in my opinion, all of these books kind of have this addictive kind of writing style where like you want to finish it all within like one sitting. And I would describe all 3 of these books as being kind of like popcorn thrillers, you know, like they are just very entertaining, very fast paced, and most of these stories are about like a person getting obsessed with another person, which is one of my favorite things in thrillers. Like, I just find it to be so entertaining. And like all of the characters in this book are so messy and like they're so fucked up, but like in the most interesting way, you know, like this is exactly why I read thrillers. So I do think that if you enjoyed either of these 2 books for any of those reasons, I think you could really enjoy this one as well. well. God, that's actually so crazy though, because if you would have told me at the start of this video that this one was going to be my favorite out of all the things that I read in this video, I would have thought that you were joking, because I would have bet money that any of these 3 books would have been a 5-star for me. Like, I thought any of these were gonna be like some of my top favorite books that I would read for the entire year. And like, I'm flabbergasted that all of these ended up being only around like 2.5 to 3 stars each, and that my favorite was Cross My Heart. Like, that is a huge surprise for me. Definitely something a little bit unexpected, but Cross My Heart was a good time. Like, I'm really surprised. This book definitely reminded me why I still read thrillers and that I can still be surprised by thrillers, because these other ones just weren't doing it for me. And how exciting, because this one actually does publish in the month of January. So by the time this video goes up, this one is probably already going to be available. So yeah, that is going to be a wrap on this reading vlog. Thank you so much for watching. If you've read any of these 4 books, or if you plan to read any of these 4 books, then do let me know your thoughts down below. And let me know, how are the 2025 releases going for you so far? Like, have you found any new favorite 2025 books yet? Let me know all of the things in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you very soon with another video. Bye!